Welcome back. Today, we have an extra special treat for everybody. My guest today is the owner of Atlantic Gymnastics, the premier gymnastics studio in the Seacoast. He is also the owner of Gym Momentum, an education platform for people within his discipline. He is an international level coach, most currently training the women's Olympic Italian team. He is an adventurer. He is a weightlifter. He is a councilman. He is a dad, and he is a blogger. My friend, Tony Retrosi.
Well, thanks, Steve. It's really appreciate you having me here. I think the first time I met you, I was upside down in a handstand at the gym working out, and you looked and said, "I want to do that." And I said, "We could do that. I could train you to do that."
Imagine that, right? I'm at On Target Fitness. Great gym, guys. Check it out. They're amazing over there. Getting stronger by the day. And I walk in. I'd switched times. I'd been working out there a little bit. I switched times, and I just come in. I see this man. I know that he's older than me. Beautiful head of hair, and he's upside down in a full handstand. And I'm just like, dude, I need that. I need that. And we're not quite there yet, but we'll get there. We'll get there, man. That was before I even knew who you were and what you were doing. So I was like, of course I should have guessed. Like, oh man, that's got to be the gymnastics guy,
Well, I have to say your energy at the gym is contagious. I love working out there because it really is. We've kind of formed our community. The other day with my wife out of town, I ended up having dinner with Amanda and her husband, Ross, one night. The next morning, Amanda, Ross, Eric, and I went to see his wife sing at Jimmy's. And then that afternoon, we all walked our dogs together on the beach in Kittery. And I'm like, wow, I got adopted by this other family of fitness fanatics. So I love it.
Yeah, man, it is beautiful how community can be created in that when you're doing something that's challenging together. I find it at On Target Fitness, big time, and I appreciate you for saying the giddy up with the energy, because I am always trying to bring that.
Yeah, we'll go with Gamba though.
The Gamba to my giddy up.
It's
so good. I'm running around the gym yelling giddy up, and then you hear Tony Gamba. Can you tell us about that? What that is?
Back in the 70s, the Japanese men's Olympic team were by far the best in the world. They were setting the tone. And they would always yell Gamba, which in Japanese means kind of like do your best. And so other countries were taking it, but it really stuck in Italy because Gamba means leg in Italian. And it's actually gone into other sports where you'll hear people yell it at football, soccer matches. And so the Gamba now is kind of integrated into Italian culture.
Whoa. So when you're teaching gymnastics, that's in Italy, you're yelling Gamba and people are loving it.
The kids, my role is I'm the emotional support dog. My job is to keep the kids calm. In competitive gymnastics, your margin of error is very small. So it's more about controlling your emotions, not being too big. Because if you go really hard, even on a very difficult skill, and you take a step out backwards, there goes your silver medal. There goes your gold medal. So it's about perfection. But the kids, they tend to yell it to each other, give their fist bump, Gamba Steve, Daya, which is go. That's the first thing that surprised me in Italy is like the kids are going, they're all yelling like, die. And I'm like, well, what did she do? And then I'm like, oh, it means go. Yeah, that was one of those little things lost in translation.
How is the translation? Have you learned some Italian, or how does that go?
I'm in the gym, because gymnastics has its own language. I would say I'm 90% fluent and very comfortable speaking Italian to the kids because they know me. They know we can find a word that works.
Yeah, they know you're an American guy trying to speak Italian.
If I don't know it, they know a word that works. I get better every time. I think within the next year, I'm going to be fairly fluent. I've been going back and forth there for a number of years. I did work in Switzerland for a year with their Olympic team. Never really picked up Swiss German or French while I was there, but a couple of the girls on the team spoke Italian, so I would speak Italian with them. In the gym in Italy, it's all Italian. And it's one way to stay in shape is if I can't speak the word, I have to physically demonstrate the correction. And I turned 59 on Saturday. So gravity's hitting me a lot harder.
Well, happy birthday.
Thanks.
And like, as I said earlier, I walked in and I saw this guy upside down, and I've also seen him upside down doing push-ups like that, and doing all these other incredible things that, like, weighted. So yeah, maybe you're not able to demonstrate to them anymore, but you're still pretty incredible, man.
I always like to challenge myself physically, and it feels good to be tired.
It does. It feels good to be tired. We recently had a PT on the program who had a son, and she had her son wanted to, for a senior project, this kid, he did something called 75 Hard, which is a program where for 75 days you do 2 45-minute workouts a day,
Okay.
one inside, one outside. You stick to a specific diet. To see a child, a 17-year-old child, but a young man wanting to do that and wanting to go in and it was just a lot different than when I was young. And so I see that in young kids, and I kind of see them wanting to be healthier and wanting to, be within fitness. And I think that that's great.
Well, you were an athlete. When we were talking the other day, you played football, and everybody has to find something to challenge themselves. And as a dad, you're going into the busiest point in your life you're ever going to have, because right now you have the numerical advantage because you only have one kid. But coming up, you're going to have to go into a man-to-man defense, and it's different. And you think you and your wife and your child are going in different directions right now. When you have this next one, you've just poured gasoline on this fire. And I know that was probably physically the most difficult time for me to find time for myself, for my own workouts, was during that time, because we were just so busy with the kids and running our own business. I'd never change anything.
Did you work out?
Yeah, I would go to Planet Fitness when the kids were a little older, but it would be like I would find 45 minutes, and I wasn't getting the intensity of a workout that I would have liked. Mm-hmm. It was better than nothing, but marginally so. And then the kids got a little older, and I'm outside playing soccer with them, and we're playing street hockey with them, and we're doing stuff. Both of my kids were always very active. They're both super active now. My son teaches rock climbing. My daughter's a wildlife biologist. We, as a family, we always did stuff. We always said that our family needs to be a verb. We need to be an action word. And I think I kind of take that in my philosophy on life, and certainly my philosophy on politics. I'm going to do one of those weird weaves where I go, but right now people are very frustrated with politics because everybody's concerned about, everybody in politics is the message. They're all talking about the message, and they want to get the message across. The message is BS unless you can back it up with action. And that needs to happen. So that is what we wanted to do, going back to when my wife and I opened up the gym, is we were about healthy lifestyles. We were about the community, and we had the opportunity to open up this gym, and we wanted to make the gym not just a place where people can go and drop off their kids. We wanted it to be the place. We wanted from the time kids were coming in at 18 months old with their parents, that they were starting a lifetime of activity, and that they were doing stuff. And that's what we wanted. And through that, we always had a competitive team, but the competitive team was not part of our business model. Our business model was really making Atlantic Gymnastics part of the community, where it's someplace that people are going to go and build a lifetime of action and of health. And looking back at, almost 31 years in the gym, I get to see the children of people I used to coach who are now graduating high school. And so these are like my grandkids graduating, because I helped raise this kid. She was a competitive gymnast. She was in the gym 25, 26 hours a week. And now her daughter's graduating, going off to college. And I look at that, and I just can't help but smile when I go in and I look and I go, like, yeah, kind of, we did this. Yeah. And that's, to me, that's really what it's about. Any business, and it doesn't matter if it's a Dunkin' Donuts or if it's a gymnastics club or a fitness center. We can be part of the community. And I would challenge any business. If you're part of the community, you're going to have a better business, because people are going to go there, not just because it's a cup of coffee, but because it's a part of the community.
Yeah, that's a wonderful sentiment that you shared with me there. That's what I'm trying to do here, and trying to find that, and trying to build community and build it along being a resource for people, so that, from this conversation, if a mom or a dad is listening and they get to hear, whoa, what's that guy doing over at Atlantic Gymnastics? They're building community. This is an access point to the other people who have built that in our, same with On Target. If I can be an access point for somebody to get them into personal training so that they can get stronger, like I've gotten stronger, and they can, maybe go for walks with other members of the community, that's wonderful. And to your point, taking action we dwell so much. I dwell so much sometimes, and I find that the best medicine for that is action. Take actionable steps.
You have to, everything you're going to do is a risk. And in gymnastics, our biggest adversary wasn't another gymnast, it was gravity. Gravity was always going to kick our ass. Gravity was going to win. So we're used to falling and getting back up again. And if you approach life that it's not a failure, it's just an opportunity to learn. I wrote a very good article, and I actually speak on this. I do this both in corporate lectures and certainly in gyms, is that failure is the prerequisite to success. And if you can't go in blind, but you have to go in going, all right, this is my acceptable failure rate. And I'm going to go in and I'm going to give this a shot. And I also need to know when I need to cut bait, and nope, this thought didn't work. Or other ideas where you're like, hey, this, you know what? We're not there yet, but we're going to hang on. We're going to hang on. And all of a sudden things explode in a good way. And I've certainly, with my wife at my side as my business partner, we're always encouraging each other. There's not a lot we're afraid of.
Yeah, dude, I can't even imagine the power in that. Like the power, because guys, you want to know what's really hard? Running and starting a business. Starting and running a business is so challenging, and to get over that hump, like you said, it's really hard at first, and then you see a lot of, people might look at someone like you who has had a lot of success in it, but you've been building it for 30 years. Like if you think about 30 years of building something, it takes so much time and energy, and so like that you guys have been able to do that together is a really cool thing.
It's even beyond the 30 years because it's break that down into the hours that we spent. When we opened up, before we opened up, probably 6 weeks before we opened the doors, we found out that Stephanie was pregnant with our first. We had to make this work. There wasn't a backup plan. And did we make mistakes? Yeah. But we worked hard. So for the first decade, that a 12-hour day was norm. And it's the kids went to bed and we're doing books or we're doing lesson plans. There was always work to do. So that it took a solid 20 years until I felt comfortable going, all right, Steve, you got this. I'm gone for a little bit.
Right.
And it took time. But anybody in business, use the resources around you. Talk to other people. Nobody right now is innovating. Everybody's just copying things that other people are doing and fixing that recipe to meet their own desire. So somebody's already been there before. Somebody has already been down that path. Maybe not as far as you want to go, but they can tell you, hey, don't do that. I did that, and that was a mistake. So you're learning from their mistakes and you're learning from their successes. I would love to see more people be innovative, but I don't think our society right now, our culture is accepting to that because we, again, going off on a small tangent, we don't have the social safety nets of other countries, even as far as healthcare. And so I can't take that chance because my wife's a cancer survivor and we need to have this level of insurance. We don't. So it all comes down to the economy. It all comes down to the economy, whether it's healthcare, education, taxes, it all comes down to the economy.
And whether we can innovate or not?
Yeah, because currently the current system is stifling innovation. Our gym opened up because there was a higher tax rate at the time, and we had somebody who was going to who was going to either have to invest money or pay that same amount of money into taxes. And to him, my wife and I were a better bet. He was going to get a better return on this investment than just paying this money, this money he was going to have to pay in taxes. And so he did this. Okay. When we opened up the gym, the day we opened up, we had 80 students. Okay. Today we have 1,500 in 2 locations. We employ 40 people. This is because taxes were higher at the time. And somebody was faced with that decision of, I have to pay this money in taxes or I have to find a good investment. I'm going to invest in Tony and Stephanie. They invested in us. 3 years later, we bought them out of the business. 3 or 4 years after that, we bought the building. 2 years after that, we opened up a second location.
And there's no space for that to exist at current, you'd say.
Right now, there's no motivation for it.
No incentive.
There's no incentive when a corporation has has a big year. They end up buying back stocks. They end up that money's not flowing back into the economy the way it should.
And so, yeah, we need to figure out a way so that money will flow back into because to play devil's advocate, I feel like we've made a huge jump in if that same person who could invest in Tony and Stephanie's gym, they in this environment in this day and age in this culture where we're at current, they wouldn't do that. There's a better mechanism for them to make their money some other way and some financial.
It wouldn't even come up because he wouldn't have losing that money. He wouldn't have the same tax bracket. That money's already going to buy another car. That money, he has no tax incentive to invest it. I read a statistic the other day, and the average salary for one person, average pay for one person, is $78,000 a year. Okay? When you remove the top 10 people, the top 10 earners in the country, the average pay drops to $55,000.
Those fuckers who are doing the surveys are including the top 10 people who
they get a paycheck. That's included. So just think, when you remove 10 people, that the average salary drops 20 grand. When you remove the top 1,000 earners in the country, the average pay is $35,000 a year. And this is why we need to make some actionable movements, some actionable statements. It's because people will look at this and the stock market those are numbers that people can understand because it's on the television and it's up or it's down. But that person that's making $35,000 a year, they're worried about putting gas in their car to get to their job.
Right. Yeah. There's 60 I think 60% of people don't invest in the stock market.
No, it's probably more than that. And I mean, if anybody has a 401k, I mean, there are avenues that it does affect you, but not to that person that they're $35,000 in take home pay. They're not looking at this. They're looking like, well, I hope I don't get sick because I can't afford to get sick because we don't have sick time.
Yeah, we don't have sick time.
And
Rent is really high. Rent is going up for no reason. They've inflated the prices by 40% in 5 years.
Yeah. Well, rent's going up because the cost of building material is going up. And I own 3 properties and I'm building a 4th. I don't. I'm just using this as an example. And I'm building a 4th. So if I'm building the 4th, I have to get my money from that. So I'm raising the money on my raising the rent on my 3 properties so I can afford to build the 4th.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. For the average person, this is a rigged economy against them. And I mean, I have my socialist leanings, but I'm not a socialist. I believe in the free market. But right now, the way our government is structured, the way our tax system is structured, it is structured in such a way that it benefits the top and hurts the bottom. And there's no middle left anymore.
Yeah, it's a common theme on this show is the degradation of the middle class and how that's just a continued thing that's happening in our society. Do you have actionable steps that you think we could take to change this so that people would start investing more in their communities?
I think you'd have to have me on for another hour because I have things in my brain, but I'd like to pull those into more cohesive thoughts. I think we do need to do something on healthcare, and we need to what kind of country are we that we don't protect the poorest among us? And as a business owner, okay, with my staff, I don't want you worried about you getting sick or about you taking a day off because your son is sick and you can't come in. You know, I'll be like, oh, Steve will figure it out, because that makes you loyal to my business. Okay. That makes you a better employee because when you're out there and you're working with kids, you're not stressed. You're able to concentrate on the job at hand. And if we don't do that as a country, we're just falling further and further behind, whether it's in green energy technology. Why aren't we making all of the solar panels here?
Yeah.
Why we can do sustainable logging operations in the North Country. So why are we cutting that wood and sending it to Georgia or Canada to be processed? We can do that here. I'm not I'll take one example. Tariffs aren't necessarily good or bad, but the tariff is a stick. And with the stick, you need to have the carrot. And if you're going to have tariffs, and we'll go back, we'll talk about lumber for a second. If you have the tariffs and saying, okay, we're going to put a 20% tariff on any lumber that's coming in from Canada. I'm not picking on my friends from Canada. It's just good. It's just an example. But we put that on. That's great. But what we've done is just raise the price of lumber. We have to admit that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But if at the same time I incentivize lumber mills in northern Maine and New Hampshire, in Vermont, in northern New England, if I incentivize these lumber operations there, now we're employing Americans. We're building things at home. Okay, we're doing things. We're doing things conscientiously. We're not. You can't have just a stick. You have to have the carrot. I mean, you do that. That we raise our children that way.
Mm-hmm.
Everything has consequences, and here's the consequence. Well, but now you have to have that carrot. And right now, politics right now, especially by the MAGA wing of the Republican Party, is about cruelty for the sake of cruelty. And they're just trying to show that they can be meaner than the person next to them because somehow that's tough. And I think it was Gandhi that said, no man has stood taller than when he reached down to help somebody up. When the whole pulling yourself up by your bootstraps, that started as an ironic statement because it is not possible to pull yourself up by your bootstraps. But we're asking people to do this. This is...
It's broken.
It's
or rather, it's designed this way.
It is definitely... It's been rolling this way. I'm being 20 years older than you plus. It's been rolling this way basically since the late 70s.
Yeah, and they said that, and I know, from my understanding, you're a Democrat, yeah?
Yes.
So that is something that I blame. I grew up as a Democrat. I grew up as somebody who was very liberal. I currently am an independent, and I found that the Democrats, they really allowed for the subversion of this because they were the people in the 60s and the 70s who were fighting for this stuff and fighting for the everyman and the middle class, and the country was booming in that in that regard. Every person was able to afford a house. Everyone was able to get that little slice of America. But then the Democrats, they started to realize that they could pay the messaging and paying these consultants and the ecosystem that it created around it, and the Washington folk and it created this cesspool of people who actually were not interested in helping anybody. They were just interested in enriching themselves, which we thought that's how I grew up as. That's what I thought the Republican Party was. Just people who didn't necessarily care, but they just wanted to enrich themselves and didn't care about social progress at all. And now I feel like the Democrats, I had to take such a deep look into myself and to believe this stuff and say, like, man, why? Because I think Bernie Sanders was recently on an interview, and he's the most progressive, Democrat amongst us, and he said the same thing, that it was some type of degradation, from the Democratic Party at some point, and you nailed it. It was in the 60s and 70s where it was great, and then since then it's been on this slow.
So since 68, between 68 and 92, there was only 4 years of a Democratic president. You only had the 4 years of Carter.
Right. That's true. Mm-hmm.
Until Clinton was elected in 92, and he was the one that deregulated most of Wall Street. And it is time for a change. The MAGA wing of the Republican Party has swung so far right, but there is not a unified liberal wing of the Democratic Party right now. As a Democrat, we get distracted by shiny things. It really it comes down to the economy, and it has shown, through the last 100 years that the Democratic Party is better on the economy. But we get distracted by social issues and let the Republican Party take credit for the economy. And I don't know if it's fixable. I'd love being on city council in Dover because I'm helping people get their garbage picked up. I'm helping people make sure the roads are clean. We're helping, keeping our budget under control. I know I'm coming off as, a really crazy liberal, but I'm a businessman, so I'm pretty fiscally conservative.
I don't think you're coming off that way at all.
Oh, thank you. I'm pretty fiscally conservative. I can't run my business that way. I have to. Nobody minds paying high taxes if there's a return on what they get. And our problem right now is that our taxes are high and we're not seeing the return on our investment.
Mm-hmm.
And in New Hampshire, as we're recording this, just over the border.
Federally and state taxes? Federal and state taxes?
I think federal, yeah. I would say both. I mean, certainly
we're paying all this money, right? We pay all this money into taxes, and our nation is falling apart. Our kids are as sick as they've ever been.
Yeah.
There's no progress. There's no, the infrastructure isn't being built up.
Let's beat up on the insurance companies, because if our system worked, every other country in the world would clamor to be our system, and they're not. Okay, that we've created this insurance scam. The only way an insurance company makes money is by taking in more than they give out. And we're talking about people's health.
Accept premiums, deny claims.
Yeah, this is people's health. Okay, years ago, I was at a competition. I was in France. I got food poisoning, and it was honestly the worst I've ever felt. Like, it was horrible. They sent a doctor to my hotel room. And I could not get up. I was lying on the floor of the bathroom, and this man comes in and he puts an IV in my arm, and I'm starting to feel better. And I'm like, I have a credit card over there. And he's like, why do I need your credit card? He said, I'm a doctor. My job is to to get you healthy. And he was so, arrogant's not the right word, but he was so disappointed. Okay. And we're like, well, we have a better educational system. This doctor went to Harvard. He just chose not to practice here.
Mm-hmm.
There were, just 2 weeks ago, they were interviewing the person who's in charge of the Canadian healthcare system. And she said, we realize we have a problem. We don't have enough doctors here in Canada. And the American guy on the other side is like, well, this is because our system is better. And she said, do you realize that we had 53,000 doctors approach us last year to try to get their credentials switched from the U.S. to Canada because they wanted to be part of our system? So our professionals are leaving. Okay, I know people in the hospitals around here. They're frustrated by it. Okay, if we don't take some kind of action in a concrete way that makes people's lives better, we deserve to get our asses kicked. And we are not going to be the healthy country that we want to be.
Yeah, that's really unique about France. Like, is France, because you have way more, I've never been to France. I know what I see about it online and stuff. And to me, they're saying that France isn't in a good place at all. And I don't know if that's true. They had the farmer stuff that was happening there with them. But that's what's cool about France is their farmers can fight back and go and protest, and that's an okay thing. When the protesters from Canada tried to do that, and regardless of the right lane, during the pandemic, I think the pandemic was a lot of BS, and the way that was handled, and they were like debanking these truckers.
Right.
They were and anybody who knew these truckers who's sending them money, they were taking away these people's bank accounts. Like, that's
think about what would happen right now if our farmers said, enough. If our beef farmers said, you know what, they're deregulating the beef industry, and that's going to make me as a cattle rancher, that's going to push me out of business and push poor quality meat into the food stream. Okay, so I'm going to protest, and I'm going to take my tractor, and we're all going to bring these tractors, and we're going to be in Washington, D.C. Okay, do you really think the Trump administration is going to handle a bunch of farmers in downtown Washington, D.C.? How quick is he calling out the National Guard? A lot quicker than he did on January 6th.
Probably, yeah, for sure. I think that I definitely agree. So there's not the room for it. I do think that the Biden administration would have done the same exact thing, though.
I'm not disagreeing with you, yeah.
Yeah, Biden had cancer. You see this? Did you see this news?
Yeah.
And this is what's sad is like that's what my other disillusion with the Democrats was like, here I am. I'm wanting to bring some type of Giddy up to this, to this race and to make it a real thing. And I knew since 2021 that Biden was not, mentally there. It had mental clarity.
We all did.
We all did, right? But people actually will tell you that they learned at the debate. That's when they learned. And I'll say, I'll actually show you 5 hours of footage of him stumbling on his words, not making sense, not being able to. And now you find out the guy had cancer for 5 years, for 4 years that he was there. And
the only time I only voted for Biden in the presidential election, I didn't vote for him in the primary. I was a Bernie guy. And when he got elected and chose Kamala as his running mate, I said, okay, this is going to be a one-term president. Kamala's going to start running in 2 years. And it would be a fair and open primary with other people getting involved. And I'm not saying Kamala wasn't in the end going to be the choice, but when other people get involved, you change the message because that person has to realize I need to cast a wider net. I have to listen to this side of the party and that side of the party. It was such a disaster. There's not a Democratic politician alive that wasn't disappointed with the entire situation.
Yeah, I wish they would say that. I mean, they're just starting
that book
to.
That came out, Jake Tapper's book, and I think he's got a lot of people that are. I haven't read the book, just I've heard a couple of podcasts with it, and I think there's a lot. We have a lot of reckoning to do as a party. More importantly, I look at this as a human being, and I go, this is the best we can do. This isn't our best and brightest, okay? Not from the top to the bottom. That Kristi Noem didn't know what habeas corpus was. Mm-hmm. That Donald Trump thought that, when he was talking about the Declaration of Independence, that it was a beautiful unifying document. It was a declaration of war. It was not this is not our best and brightest. We can do better than this. And as voters, as human beings, we have to stop just going like, well, this is good enough. And we have to step up and go, yeah, I'm going to run. I'm going to get my ass kicked, but I'm going to run because I'm going to move that needle. I'm going to talk about the importance of healthy living. And this is going to be it. And no, you're probably not going to get elected, but somebody's going to listen to you and they're going to realize they want your voters. So they're going to pull that into their platform.
Do you want to know what? It's so perfect that you say this, and this is just my opinion, and feel free to throw it right back at me. That was happening. I was a part of it. I was in Boston when RFK announced that he was running for president, and this is a man who spent his career fighting EPA, fighting Mercury, fighting for the fishermen on Long Island Sound. He was a tried and true corporate attorney, a guy that I didn't, of course he was a Kennedy. He had his own, his ego definitely existed, but no person running for president doesn't have that. And I honestly think that if the Democrats did not subvert the election, if they didn't put all of their messaging in trying to hurt Bobby Kennedy and trying to make sure that his campaign never became something, that would have been, he likely would have, I think he'd be the president of the United States right now. I think that he would have beaten Donald Trump. And I think that's why it's actually why Donald. It's so funny that the Democrats did that to him, and then the reason that they lost the election was because the independents and the Maha movement are the people who swung the election to Donald Trump.
I think I understand where you're at. I disagree because I think he's a little bit too fringe, and I have a hard time with his science denial
For the vaccine stuff.
for vaccine things. I've lost friends and relatives through preventable diseases, and I'm old enough to remember, have had friends that got really, really super sick and never saw them in school again from measles.
Mm-hmm.
That this was back in the early 70s. So I don't think he was the right person, but some of his messaging was correct. And he would not have been electable nationwide because he would not have carried the coasts. And that's just that's just the math behind it. You have to be on the Democratic ticket, you need to carry the coasts, and he probably wasn't going to be able to do that.
Yeah, I definitely hear what you're saying, and likely could have been the case. I think if the Democratic Party got behind him and the leadership of the Democratic Party, the DNC, and they said, hey, we need to shore up some of this messaging. Yep. He wasn't, even on the campaign, he wasn't saying the vaccine stuff. He was trying to get away from that.
If they had groomed him 8 years out, I could see it, or somebody like him doing it. But there is that grooming process of, when I was asked if I was interested in running for the U.S. House, I said I'm not the right person. I don't have the time to put my brain around that and fundraise at the same time I'm trying to learn the job. Mm-hmm. And it's something that if it was 2 years ago, maybe.
Yeah,
but
the financial incentives, they're mangled in that way, right? Like who Trump gets his money from for fundraising, who the Democrats get their money from fundraising.
Oh, it's terrible.
It's so terrible, right? We should have campaign finance reform.
Everybody will say so until they get elected and they need to raise money for their next election.
Yeah, it is so true, and it's so insidious, and it's like that's what I want to do is I wouldn't care, and maybe my will to power would change once you get in it, and I can't predict that, but I feel like I want to be that guy. I want to be the guy that actually makes change in the world, and I don't know if that's like whatever for running for office, maybe that's later in life or something, maybe, but I'm trying to do it now. But we need actual change. We need actionable steps to make. And that, these people never do anything. They just get into their position of power, and then they realize, especially with the House, it's every 2 years.
Well, that's the thing. If you think of how the House and the Senate work, that the House of Representatives, New Hampshire has 2, New York has 100, California has 100 people from the House. They have like so many people that are there. Okay, but they actually are more representative of us than the Senate, because if you look at the Senate, Wyoming has 1 senator for they don't have 1 million people, so they have 1 senator for 400,000 people. Okay, New York has 1 senator for 24 million people, and the Senate has more power. Mm-hmm. So, I'm not saying it's the system of checks and balances works until it doesn't. But 2 years from the time you come in, if the day you set foot onto the House floor, okay, you need to raise probably $10,000 a day in order to fund your next election. Now, if I'm focusing on $10,000 a day that I know that's how much I'm going to need to raise if I'm going to be here for another 2 years, I'm thinking of that. I'm not thinking about Steve from Maine, who I want to try to help out because he's got some good ideas.
Yeah, that's the problem, and so it's like, how do we create a system? How do we change the system so that it incentivizes people to want to get into into service work? And I think that's really what it is realizing that it's not a career. And I think the people who have done it as a career, I despise them.
Oh yeah,
They disgust me. Like it's
power corrupts.
yeah, power corrupts.
And as it becomes, this is going to be my job, how I'm going to put my kids through college, how I'm going to do all these other things. That doesn't make it a functional working government, because now I'm answering to different companies instead of my constituents. That's what I love. Like in Dover, okay, I have, I don't know, 4,000 or 5,000 households in my ward, and I want any one of them to, if I talk to somebody like, oh, can I email? Here's my phone number. Stop by my house. Like this. I'm not going to make everybody happy, but I'm going to work for you.
Yeah, Tony, I think that's actually the key, I think. And so, there's a way where we need more support, what you're saying, and we need to take care of the poorest people amongst us. But is that something that we need to rely on the federal government for? Because the way I used to believe that, I used to, liberal, Democrat background, that's what I thought. Now I see it now as what you're doing is the Giddy Up, is decentralization, is bringing this back to the communities. And so if we're empowered in our communities to do this, where people can come and talk to you, and you are a local business owner who's doing it here and affecting 40 people's lives, directly via paychecks and community, and then 1,500 families via giving their kids healthy exercise. Like, that's awesome. That's a Giddy Up. We need more of that.
Well, like with schools, we can't do it alone. A town can't do it alone. Dover, Elliott, anywhere on the seacoast, we know what's best for the people in our town. We know what people need because we see them. We see the guy walking down the street. We see, as you're driving into Home Depot, you see the little homeless tents off to one side. You see that, so we need to fix it. But we don't have the ability to raise enough money to take care of that situation. And we need the federal government's help. We need it's impossible to. It's not impossible. Nothing's impossible. It's truly difficult to raise that money locally. And when you do that, you're going to force out, because property taxes and other taxes are going to have to get to a point where you're going to force out the people you're trying to help.
I think that's happening.
Oh, it absolutely is.
Yeah, the seacoast is so it's sad because it's so wonderful and it's so beautiful, and it can be the greatest place that I think that exists in the United States of America. But at the same time, it's keeping people like me and my family out, and we're here now, and we would like to buy a home, and we'd like to do that, and we're working on it.
I mentioned my wife's a realtor.
Yes, yes, sir, yes, sir. We're gonna do it, and I know that my will to power. I know that I'm gonna make it, but I know what my Giddy Up is, and I know what my ability to earn is, and my wife is a good ability to earn as well, and we're not quite there yet, but we're close, and we would have been there if they didn't inflate the prices, by 60% on the housing market. But it's just the seacoast is going in that direction.
We live in a beautiful area, and there's going to be a cost to where we live. It does come back to, are you getting the return on your investment? And a lot of people right now are going to say, no, I've paid all this money to live here, and it's just become difficult. We can do better. The housing shortage took us 10 or 15 years to get here. We're not going to fix it in 2 years. It's not going to happen. That's the reality. There's not enough people to build the homes. There's not enough material. We live in an area where we have the land.
There's enough land around here.
There's enough land, but have you tried to get a contractor to just come into your home and fix a set of shelves? they're like, no, it's too small of a job. I'm building, I'm building this project in downtown Dover. I'm building this in Exeter. There's just, it took us a long time to get to this shortage. Some of it is overregulation of what's allowed. I'm not going to mention any towns because I would get the regulations incorrect. But there are towns where you're required a full acre per house. Okay. And so, well, that means there's all this livable space that nobody's living in, and all you're doing is raking leaves and mowing that space where you could easily have another house there. Okay. You and I talked about why public transportation isn't as good here as it is in Europe. Where I have the house in Italy, okay, there's 40,000 people in that town. So that would be a medium-sized city for the U.S., but everything is really compact. Everybody lives within a 10-minute walk.
How many people live in Dover?
35,000.
So it's about Dover.
Yeah, okay. But everybody lives in a 10-minute walk from each other. And it's a 10-minute walk to the train station from me.
There's no, and they're not using the land. And I think that's what's different about the United States is we're so spread out. We were able to do that at first. Like,
right.
I would venture to guess that your house is on more than 1 acre.
Currently, no.
Currently, no. Okay.
Yeah,
I grew up on like 5 acres.
When we downsized during COVID, my kids moved out to Colorado and we realized they weren't coming back. We had almost 2 acres, too big of a house. It just, there were rooms we didn't go into. So we downsized. But I have just...
Wish I knew you then. Could have scooped it right up off you.
It would have been a good price then.
Giddy up.
But I live kind of like right across the water here. I live right on the water on Dover Point.
Yeah.
But in most European towns, everybody can walk to the train station and walk home. Here, if from the train station in Dover, if I were to take the train from Boston to Dover, so I was lessening my environmental impact, I'm on at least 2 buses to get back to my house, or I'm driving my car and leaving my car at the train station and waiting on it. So, man, why don't I just drive down to Boston? Okay? Because we're not going to change that overnight, but certain towns, they can take their zoning and make some changes that's going to make it easier to build more homes on.
Yeah, I think I love this, and I hate it at the same time. I love it that's the giddy up, and it's going to maybe present opportunity for somebody like me to then go and get my acre, my house that's 0.2 acres or whatever, and it has a home on there. But like building a home and being the American dream is having an acre, at least an acre to yourself.
But somebody fed you that American dream.
You want to know what? You're not wrong, because this person here, Nerdy Turnip Farm, who's they're a CSA in Rochester, they're who I get my vegetables from. Please, guys, go check them out. She provides food for her community for, probably has 100 CSA members. So she's giving them, 18 weeks. She's giving them, a box of food every single week, and has a farm store. So it's providing, for customers to come in. She does it on a half acre of land.
Yeah.
So it is. But even possible.
If we had 8 other friends, okay, and each one of us lived in a house that had an acre of land to it. We're taking up 10 acres, where all 10 of us can live in 2 acres comfortably. Our house would probably be the same size. And instead of having a huge lawn that we bitch about every Saturday because we have to go mow and rake leaves on, we have 8 acres that somebody's farming and providing food for us. Okay? Now, I'm just saying that's how zoning can have a real world effect. Okay? How is that? Your house, the square footage of your house is exactly the same. You're going to have a nice front porch. You're going to have a nice back porch. You might even be able to put in a swimming pool. But what you're not going to have is the rest of that acreage that you don't use.
Yeah, it's that.
Somebody fed you the American dream that they think that's what you need. That's what we needed when you needed to grow your own vegetables.
Right.
I have three tomato plants. And they're in pots on my terrace. Okay, gives me all the tomatoes I need.
It's a good way to pitch it to me, because maybe that was something that was sold to me, and it's something that but I am somebody who would like to, to eventually, maybe I say this, I don't actually know if I would be this guy, because I'm the guy who likes to connect myself with everybody and know the CSA guy and know this person and know that, and I get a lot of my stuff from that. But I would like, and I'm a great gardener. I love to garden. I know how to do it well. I've cultivated many crops, and I like to, there's a part of me that if, we're getting away from that, like homesteading, chickens and doing that. So as long as people had enough space to be able to do that on their own, or, within the community that they're in, like that's great. That's a giddy up. Let's do it.
We all can do that. I mean, and I certainly support if you're like, hey, I've got great soil to grow potatoes, so I'm going to grow potatoes. Tony, you can grow zucchini, and we make this a community. That's fine. But look at some of these houses. They don't do that. I'm not telling them that they have to. I'm just saying that we can change zoning to make that would make it more affordable. Mm. And don't you kind of think it's funny that here that we're in Maine, you buy your eggs and vegetables from somebody's house, but you buy your marijuana at a store? That's changed a lot in my life.
It is. It's interesting, and it's like a huge debate that goes on between the medical side of it and the rec side of it, where it's, the rec side is completely tested and the med side isn't, and the med people say, well, we don't need to test. We've been doing this forever. We're doing the right thing. We're providing people with the medicine. This is something that's been going on forever. And the rec people say, no, some people are manipulating the system and putting a ton of pesticides and a ton of bullshit and,
that's where we need the federal government. That's where we need oversight.
Dude.
And whether it's, because if you look at the nutritional supplement industry, mm-hmm. every year somebody gets busted because they are putting in such terrible things that they're adding HGH, they're adding human growth hormone into something, because you're going to take this supplement that says it's all natural and it's going to help you out and it's just a protein powder, and you're like, I feel really good. And then you start growing like a third ear on the side of your face and realize, wow, that probably was stuff in there I probably shouldn't have been having. But because it's an unregulated industry, that it's not getting independently tested.
Yeah, it's a mess. It's definitely a mess.
And I want to know what's in it. If I don't know the farmer, and I love farm stands, don't get me wrong, but if I don't know the farmer, if I don't know, I don't generally eat red meat. I just don't feel great after, but I would have a hard time going into BJ's and buying a steak.
Yeah, I wouldn't do it.
Just not sure where it's coming from. That being said, if I was throwing a huge party and I was going to have 20 people, I'm going to BJ's and buying steak.
Right.
But it's not going to be my weekly meal.
And Sam, to that point, I will go I'm going over somebody's house and they're cooking BJ steak or Market Basket steak or whatever. Yeah. I'm not going to always be prissy about it and say, I'm not going to eat that. I'll eat it. I'll engage with it. And I will also.
You're just not going to do it it's not going to be where I'm eating every day.
Right. Yeah. The meat scene for me is it's so gross, and the factory farm stuff. So if you don't know your farmer, if you're not using some, and that's the thing, dude, is really it comes down to the same thing with the housing stuff, right? Like, even if there was more houses that were, and I know supply and demand is a thing, but real estate prices generally do not, especially in this area, historically have only come down like 3 times in the last, 140 years.
Oh, like just 2000. I can't imagine, other than 2008 and just prior to COVID when people were freaking out, that they've come down
right
at all.
Right. And so creating more supply. Like, right now, to be honest, like if you drive around Dover, you drive around Somersworth, Rochester, Portsmouth, guess what? There's houses for sale. There's a lot of houses for sale, but the people don't have, to your point of the 35K income that's average for, the
Yeah.
average American. People don't make enough money to purchase these houses. They were inflated too quickly. As well, you made another great point that the person who does own the two or three houses is when we started to do that to each other. Before, there wasn't all these landlords, and that wasn't a way that people were earning passive income. And then sometime in the last 40 years, a lot of people started to do that within their communities.
Well, think of how if you own a house, your property taxes are based on the city assessment of your property, and you have this assessment. So that's how much I'm going to have to pay in property taxes. Sometimes it gets so much that I might like I can't afford to stay in this house. We're forcing people out of homes because this assessment is artificial. And I believe in real estate, but right now we don't have a functioning oversight
To keep it in line, to not allow things to go, to not allow
and
BlackRock to buy all the houses.
I'm not talking price. Yeah, it wouldn't necessarily be price control, but if all we did in Dover, we do give incentive for people who own multiple properties if they make some of them workforce housing or affordable housing. They are able to get something on their taxes. I don't know what it is. I can't remember what it is. When things are being built, as they're building a big project, a builder can come in and say, I'm going to make so many of these apartments in this project affordable housing. And so they will be taxed for a certain amount of time on what the property was worth before they built. So that it's incentive for them. This, in the end, is good for the citizens of Dover and good for the builder. So we're incentivizing building. Okay, we're incentivizing some amount of rent control. Okay, but long term, it's good because now we can have people who can afford to live and work in Dover, and it's the hardest part. And when we see what our taxes are and what we're getting from it, and right now Dover's building a lot, but we're not seeing the return on that just yet because nobody's living in them.
Right.
And when things come online, it's going to make a difference. And the schools are such a big part of that, but you essentially pay. The school costs the same whether a classroom costs the same whether you have 10 kids in it or 20 kids in it.
Right. Okay.
That classroom costs the same.
The classroom costs the same. Yeah, because you're paying the teacher the same. You're paying the teacher. Yeah, everything's the same.
Everything's the same. So Dover has lots of room to grow that would not impact the school at all.
Yeah, that's why and I'm glad that you're thinking the way you're thinking, and I hope that some of the other councilmen on the council.
I've learned from them. This is I just finished my first year on city council in January, and I feel so outclassed by the other people on there. They just are. Everyone is just so smart, and
Love it.
I spend a lot of time. I'm a very contemplative person. I spend a lot of time listening before I have anything to say, because there's people that are certainly smarter than me, have been around, know the pitfalls. So I just spend a lot of time like nodding my head going, okay. And then I have to really give it thought because I'm learning.
Well, yeah, keep learning, and kudos to the those members of the council who have been doing it for some time, because I'll tell you what, when people talk about the Seacoast, and you mentioned Dover and you mentioned Rochester, and so, that's, Rochester, people think horrible, worst place in one of the worst places in New Hampshire. And then people think of Dover and they say dirty Dover. And what I see as somebody who came from like a nice suburb, Massachusetts, South Shore kid, I see Dover and I'm like, man, some of these other towns, Portsmouth, Some of the other towns that are close to Portsmouth. I don't want to say the names. I always bag on Portsmouth, so I'm going to keep bagging on them. But I don't want to bag on the other towns. And so the Dover, don't sleep on Dover. I think Dover in 10 years is going to be one of the premier places to live in New Hampshire.
It's not even going to be 10 years. It's going to be this December.
Yeah,
I'm not kidding. What they have going on, the community, from Main Street to people being out on 6th Street, down on Dover Point, everything in between. There's a lot going on, and everybody's excited about what can happen. I mean, we just had our 400th birthday. There's so much that is happening, so many new builds. I can't even imagine the square yards of Tyvek that is. You go through and you just see all these buildings wrapped because there's so many buildings. We've got some great builders that Dover's working with.
The Airy Brothers, who just bought
Yep,
Harvey's.
they just bought that Harvey's building. You've got Chinberg, you've got Chad Caggiolari. I don't want to leave everybody out. I mean, those are just names that just popped into my head. But they're also, to me, seem to be responsible builders. They are not building a glass and steel structure. They're building things that are going to keep Dover looking like Dover. That
like the mills, Chinberg and the mills.
Yep, they're going to make it look that Dover's still going to keep its heart. I think Portsmouth. I love Portsmouth. It's great, and it is the anomaly because it is such a visited city that there are more hotel room beds in the Portsmouth area than there are full-time residents. So it's different, and it's easy to beat them up, but it's kind of like Brad Marchand. Everybody hates him unless he's on your team, and then he's your favorite.
Yeah, to be clear, the reason I hate Portsmouth, I love Portsmouth. The reason that I get angry at Portsmouth and talk about it on this show is because they price me out.
Oh yeah, well it's
that simple.
I have a building in Portsmouth. I have a gym in Portsmouth. It's great. We love it, but man, we can't afford to live there, can we? And I know they're dealing with their own issues. They're dealing with growth issues. Unlike Portsmouth, Dover has room to grow. We've got land. We've got some great restaurants. Evan Hennessy from Stages.
Mm-hmm.
I hope I got his name right.
Yeah, I think so.
So he has Stages. He's a James Beard Award winner. He's got one of the best restaurants I've been in the world. And I've been to some amazing restaurants. He's opening up another restaurant right downtown Portsmouth, or downtown Dover.
Oh, awesome.
And it's going to be a more casual Italian, really right on the Riverwalk area. Like, there'll be outdoor seating. I mean, like, look at what Dover has. I mean, this is big stuff.
It is, yeah.
I live at the very tip of Dover. Like, on a good day, I could hit Newington with a golf ball with a 9-iron. I mean, I live on the tip of Dover Point. But I'm proud of Dover. I've lived in Dover since I moved here in '86 and had an apartment in Dover when I went to college. And I've lived there. When Stephanie and I opened up our gym, we opened up in Portsmouth because there was already a gym in Dover.
Okay.
And that's where we met. We were working at the gym in Dover at the time. And we opened up that gym. We opened up Atlantic in Portsmouth. When the gym in Dover went out of business, we opened up a second location. And I love the people that I work with. I love the people that I see on the street. Some of my staff have been with me since the day I opened up. Some of my staff were gymnasts the day I opened up, gone to college and come back and worked for us.
Yeah, dude. That's community.
And
that's how you build it.
There's a funny story. So do you remember Breaking New Grounds in downtown Portsmouth?
Of course, yeah.
Okay. So that was I would work my morning at my Portsmouth gym. I'd head downtown and I'd grab a cup of coffee. And I'd always go to Breaking New Grounds. It was just, reasonable Wi-Fi, decent coffee. I could just sit there. So I'm drinking my coffee, and this little girl comes in, and she has like the Halloween princess dress on, and she's got like the plastic hooker shoes. She's like 4 years old, and she's like click, 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 comes walking in. She goes, "Mom, look, that's Tony from the gym." I didn't recognize him with his clothes on. Oh, dear Lord.
Oh, man.
There's nothing I'm saying. And I'm just like, yeah, she didn't recognize me without gym clothes on. Like, totally different.
Yeah.
But it's, I like the kids that I see. I can't get my hair cut without somebody telling me I used to be their gymnastics coach. Emily from the gym, she used to come to my gym.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Cool.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that. That's awesome.
Yep.
Now, because this is a great question to ask you because of your, your experience with children and what's going on in the world right now. So you've seen 30 years of children come through your place, and before that you were coaching children, and so you have more experience than I can even say to the audience, and so to me, what it looks like is how I was, me and my friends, and how healthy we were, and what we did. We were, as a group, we were a lot healthier. Chronic disease in children, and a lot of statistics back this up. I don't know if you're seeing this because you're seeing kids who are seeking it out and families who are seeking action, but I'm just curious what your opinion is on where we are at compared to where we were in terms of childhood health.
I think we were worse a few years ago. I'd say maybe 10 years ago, I was concerned looking at the kids coming into the gym. And since then, I think the Seacoast area is a pretty healthy area in general. A lot of healthy lifestyles going on here. But 10 years ago, I remember Steph and I talking, going like, "Oh man, like we're not seeing we're seeing more asthma. We're seeing unhealthier family lifestyles coming in." But I really think we've changed.
Mm-hmm.
But there would be too many factors for me to put a finger on, and it could just be economics. It could be that people being healthy costs money, and and people are able to eat healthier.
Dude, they can do so much stuff when you have money.
But I've been to, certainly spending a great deal of time in Western Europe, predominantly Italy and Switzerland. I think, I don't think we eat as healthy as the Italians, but we certainly smoke a lot less. When I go out to the Midwest and I go to other places in the U.S., there are really poor eating habits. And it costs money to eat well. And I grew up really poor with a single mom, that we would have, for example, like hot dogs, mac and cheese, 2 or 3 nights a week, because that's what she could afford to feed us. And that was it. I probably haven't had hot dogs and mac and cheese since I was in 6th grade. When she remarried, she got a better job, we started eating better. But there were a few years where that was what she could afford, and that's what we did.
Yeah, and what a way to teach,
And she was a gymnastics coach.
Yeah, man. That must have been tough on her.
She knew what healthy eating was. She knew what she could do. But the financial impact of, living in New York with 2 kids is different.
It's failing. It's failing. And that was happening back then. And now it's happening, even worse now, where it's so subverted now that people don't even know that they're, it's just like they just are putting this bad food into their body consistently because it's cheap.
Yeah.
And it's cheap to produce. And the thing is, it's not even really that cheap. It's still expensive. And And people, so people are so stressed out. They're having to put this bad food in their body. And I want some type of reprieve. I want some type of reprieve for the 70% of people who live in the middle.
It's if we just go back to food waste, that instead of Shaw's, Hannaford's, Market Basket, whomever, instead of them, when food gets poor, instead of them, do they throw it out, or is it available to people who need it? I don't know.
Right. I know they give some of their stuff to like the local food pantries, some like the Hannafords and stuff like that. I know that they do some stuff. I've done some with like the Salvation Army. They provide meals for people.
Excellent. We live in a country that produces more than we can ever consume. We live in a country full of abundance, but people are going to bed hungry. There's something wrong.
There's something wrong, dude. And do we figure it out? Like that's what I'm so curious about, whether we are going to figure it out or not.
Well, I think necessity is the mother of all inventions, but you can't just. We whine, we message, we do all this instead of getting pissed and taking a stand, and going like, no, this is wrong. And stand up. But nobody wants to do that because they're like, well, I don't want to upset my neighbor. I don't want to do this. I can't do that because my boss might not agree with me.
Right.
Okay. The fact that your boss doesn't agree with you is great, because it gives you perspective. When my office manager and one of my office managers, Dina, she and I have a problem in that we think very, very, very much alike. So if she has an idea, I think that idea is brilliant. If I have an idea, she thinks my idea is brilliant, and we're ready to go. And then somebody else will come in and go, hey, did you guys think about this? And we're like, oh, we didn't. So you need to have that perspective. Okay? That's what makes our country great, is that we still have that First Amendment. We still have that right to free speech.
Thank God. Thank God.
And nobody should be punished for what they write in an editorial, for what they say on the street. That I might say, Steve, you work for me, you can't wear that T-shirt. That's not a professional dress. I can't have you handing out political literature inside the gym. Okay. I didn't even put up my own political signs outside of my buildings. That was an ethical decision.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Okay. And how my staff voted, that's their business. It's not my business at all.
Right. So there's the workplace isn't a place to talk about it.
Yeah.
Or because you want people.
If they want to talk about it at lunch, that's their time.
So you wouldn't have a problem with one of your employees going out and writing an editorial to something that you like starkly disagreed with, and they wrote an editorial in the Dover newspaper.
If I were to.
And no association with you, no association with Atlantic Gymnastics, was just their opinion on it.
If it's their opinion, providing it was healthy. If they were espousing Nazi beliefs, I don't think I could ethically have them work for me.
I think there's a line to it. Yeah, there's a line. I mean, there's a line to it.
There's a line, but that line's pretty far away.
But the line,
right.
So the line is far away.
I can't say, oh no,
right.
There are definite lines, but those lines. If somebody comes out, I'm a Democrat. If somebody comes out and one of my staff writes an editorial supporting an opponent, that's their business.
Can I ask you something that this is, and feel free,
Sure.
not if you don't want to discuss it, it's a topic that's in culture, and I'm trying to wrap my head around it, especially being a new dad, and a parent. And so, and I don't know if what the extent of it that has taken place in Dover or at all. But one thing that comes to mind when we're talking about this, in that people I've seen people who have thought one way, and this is on both sides of it, that have thought one way, and they have moved on from employees one way or another, whether that's figuring out how to fire them, figuring out how to let them go, or that being a mutual decision. And this is about what's happening with the trans movement and with children in schools. And so and just in general, like I think some businesses will put that flag on their business and will fly it, and then others will not do that. And if your employees don't necessarily vibe with that, sometimes there's an expectation that you should be doing this as your business, or an expectation that you shouldn't be doing this as your business. And I'm just curious as if you have any opinions on it.
I think it's a political third rail. I don't think it's an issue.
Mm-hmm.
We're an inclusive environment. We're an inclusive society. Okay? It's a non-issue. We have a sign in our gym, on the front of our gym, that this is no place for hate, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But we're a free society. People are free to feel and think how they want. So I think that trans rights are it's a political talking point, and it really does not affect anything we do in the gym. I can go one step past that and saying, trans athletes in sports. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know how many trans athletes there are in NCAA sports?
I'm not sure.
Now
10? I think I've heard that. I've heard the number 10.
10. Think about how many minutes news organizations spend to talk about 10 people. How many people go hungry every night?
I know.
So that's why, to me, it's not an issue. Okay. And they've even come out and said, that it isn't an issue. In the Olympic movement, okay, for the Olympic Games, we're blood tested, okay, and there is a test on your hormone levels, because you can be a biological female and have naturally high occurring testosterone, in which case they put you on an inhibitor and you have to be under a certain line. It's a black and white rule. That's what it takes to compete in the sport,
mm-hmm.
whatever sport it is. Okay? That's all.
Yeah, that sounds
simple.
That sounds great for like the Olympics on the high level of testing of that. And I agree. To be clear, we are an inclusive society. I will have friends that are trans. I will talk with, I will engage with that community 100%. I want to support them. With children is where I get a little bit like there's kids that were doing surgery and that were going through things that were, the teachers are talking to them in a certain way, and there's resources for this. My 3-year-old can go to the York Public Library and pick up a book on his own that is suggestive of him not being a boy and him being something else potentially. And that's fine at some point, but when a book is written for a 3-year-old, I could convince my son Emmett that he's a mango, and so that I do get worried that with like anything because we've talked a lot about incentives, so I just get worried that there's only 10 NCAA athletes right now, but if you're a parent and you're a Division II, your kid's a Division II college basketball player, and he's a boy. And I only think it's with boys and girls sports. Girls have always played boy sports, and that's been fine. And that's been a thing if they wanted to challenge. But with the competitive nature of, and I know you wouldn't necessarily change your whole life, and there's a lot of hardship that comes with that. But people do, parents and other people would maybe incentivize things differently if a kid was going to get a free scholarship, or if the kid saw value in their parents loving them more because they were going to be able to achieve this.
I don't think that would ever happen. I'd like to believe it wouldn't happen, because people are who they are, and they're not going to change. I have friends who were closeted gay and were very Christian and raised in the church, and this is how I have to be. And until they finally realized I am unhappy
mm-hmm.
and suicidal,
mm-hmm.
that they're like, I actually am gay. Okay. So who you are is going to be who you are, regardless of what people tell you and regardless of what you read. There's not been one person who's been made straight by watching a straight film. So there's nobody that's going to be made gay by reading a gay literature.
Well, unless they're 3 years old. Unless they're
But
3
at
years
3
old.
years, and I understand, and certainly I am not supportive of surgery, of surgical alterations before somebody's 18 that aren't medically necessary, because there are some that are medically necessary.
Yeah.
And that's between a doctor and a patient, and that it should not have politics involved at all. But, it's back when there was I'm calling it a book banning movement in Dover, and this was a few years ago. I was thinking of running for the city council seat. So I went and I talked to the principals of schools. I went and talked to librarians, and they showed me where these scary books were. And they were on a table, and a kid could access it, but they had to ask the librarian for it. They couldn't just go and pick it up randomly. And I was like, oh, sounds safe. And they're like, do you have any other questions? I'm like, no, why would I? Like, you've got a policy. It seems to be...
Yeah, seems good.
Seems in control. This is a stretch of, but you'll see where I'm going. I had a doctor years ago where we were looking at some property, and this doctor owned this property. And, oh, you're gymnast. He goes, well, I'm glad my kids didn't do gymnastics because I wouldn't want them to be short. And I said, well, I hope they play basketball because they're tall, because basketball will make them tall. No, gymnastics doesn't make you short. Shorter people excel at gymnastics. Okay. Playing basketball doesn't make me tall. Taller people excel at basketball. Reading a book about a gay relationship is not going to make me gay. No more than if I were gay, reading a book about a straight individual is not going to make me straight. I am who I am.
Yeah, I hear you. I just with a 3-year-old, and I've talked to a lot of my gay friends. I have a very good lesbian friend who is, she loves to be outdoors. She's been on Naked and Afraid. She's, she does.
That's insane.
Oh, she was.
I love watching Naked and Afraid sitting there eating ice cream, going, "You go eat that bug."
Yeah, I get it, right? Yeah. And so she was a SEER specialist in the Air Force, and she's confided in me, and she's not the only one. And she said, Steve, if I was in high school, I was uncomfortable in my own skin because I was gay. I was uncomfortable in my own skin because I was gay, and I was kind of like a tomboy. And if they told me that I could be a boy, then maybe I might have been. Maybe I might have gone in that direction. And thank God I didn't, because I love the beautiful person that I am today. A sensitive lesbian who likes to be outdoors and likes to go on Naked and Afraid.
Yeah. I think my wife she's brilliant and funny, and she said we shouldn't do gender reveal parties until kids turn like 16 or 17 years old. And that makes sense. They're like, why are you going to do a gender reveal party for a baby that's not born? Why don't we wait until they're 16, 17 years old? That makes a lot more sense. It would be a better party at any rate.
Yeah, it'd be a better party, but I don't know, man. I understand that some people can have different, some people can be born in the wrong gender, and that's a possibility. I do understand that. I just don't. I think because it's such a non-issue, like you said, I think it's a non-issue. So we don't need to talk about it. We don't need to make it this huge thing. We don't need to make it, create all these rights and fly all these flags and make people feel a certain way if they don't feel a certain way.
It's one of the things that makes me angry about the Democratic Party is because they get so involved in how that in this non-issue, instead of saying people are going to be who people are going to be, let's talk about the economy.
Yeah, right.
People are going to be who people are going to be. How are we going to build more houses? Mm-hmm. Okay. In the end, okay, if I need a policeman, if I need a cop to come and help me, if I need somebody in an ambulance to come and help me, I don't care who it is, as long as they're trained. Mm. That's all I need. Okay. If somebody's like, well, who should we call in case of an emergency? I'm like, a doctor. Yeah. And they're like, well, how about your wife? I'm like, what's she going to do? Call a doctor.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I agree. You want to have the experts in the right field. And I want people to just feel comfortable. And if it's a non-issue, it's a non-issue.
Looking at it from a global perspective, from that 10,000 foot down, it's a non-issue. And there's nothing a child is going, if I look at, I grew up in the 70s and 80s in New York, big drug culture scene. Okay. Everywhere around me. I don't do drugs. And I didn't then.
Mm-hmm.
I tried. It just wasn't my thing. So I saw it. It didn't scare me. You know, I wasn't like, oh no, I don't want to. It was just like, okay, it just wasn't what I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, certainly when I was old enough to voice my opinion, it became easier, but it just, we can't live in fear, and we can't live in fear of our kids. The biggest thing that bothers me are in the gym are helicopter parents and lawnmower parents, because they're not allowing their kids to be ready for the world in front of them.
What's a lawnmower parent? I know the helicopter is when they're just like constantly around.
They
them.
cut down everything in front of the kids, so it's all nice and uniform. They remove they remove every obstacle. And
lawnmower parent.
And that's not real life. Okay. We want our kids to ride bikes, and we ask them to wear helmets so they don't get a head injury. Skinned knees are going to happen. And if parents are out there being that helicopter moving, or lawnmower moving every obstacle and picking the kid up, they're not letting the kid know how to fail and recover, because mom or dad is always going to take care of that. And I think that we've lost that personable accountability. Okay. Like I said, I'm going to be 59. My parents did not know where I was from probably 1978 until a few years ago. Where are you? I'm out. Come back when the lights turn off. I always checked in. We were always home for dinner because that was the rule.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But, and did we make poor decisions? Yeah. Yeah. But there were consequences. Okay. My dad, if he found out about this stuff, there was hell to pay. Okay. And I learned not to do that again.
Right.
Okay. Now, I think my kids were probably the last generation of kids who did not have a cell phone until high school. Or maybe it was 8th grade. I think they both got their first cell phones in like 8th grade, because that was just their
when I got mine, it was 8th grade.
Yeah.
You know?
So, well, you're the same age as my daughter.
Yep. So it's right around then. We were the last generation to know what it was like beforehand.
Yeah. And
I had that. I got to go out and say, hey, we'll be home by dinner. You know, my mom would come out and ring a bell.
Yeah, because the cell phone didn't work everywhere. And,
right. You didn't use it at that point.
And they were so fragile, you didn't want to carry it in your pocket when you were doing stuff. I think, I'm not blaming it on technology. I love the fact that I can get in touch with my kids now. And, how many times do you walk back into the house because you forgot your cell phone, or you run over it with your lawnmower and you feel lost?
You can't do anything in society without it. You literally can't. It's I don't know.
No, like now when I check into the hotel, half the time it's the key to the hotel is on my phone. I just
right, dude.
That's crazy. So I'm not blaming on that, but as educators, every parent is an educator. Okay, whether you're just teaching your kid how to tie his shoes, but you have to prepare them for life. And if you remove every obstacle, you can't. Then do you remember the biosphere, the biodome?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they had a problem in that they were growing trees in there. And the trees got to like 2.5 meters and would fall over. And they couldn't figure it out why. And it was because there was no wind, because there was nothing strengthening them. They had no obstacle to their growth, so their roots weren't developing deep enough.
So cool. And what a good analogy, dude.
And I think that's what a lot of parents are doing with their kids. And whether they're removing every obstacle, whether they're paying for the, 10 private lessons a month for their kid in the gym so to make their kid a better gymnast, your kid is going to be predisposed to being a great gymnast, or they're going to be a good gymnast. If you're doing 10 private lessons, you probably need to go to a different gym. They're probably not getting, go to some place that practices 10 more times a week or 10 more times a month. I mean, if, your baseball camps, that's fun. I went to gymnastics camps. I played ice hockey. I went to hockey camps. I had fun. I learned some stuff, but I had fun. Camps are fun. Okay. You got to let kids play.
Let them go to the camp, you're saying? Like, let them go to the, is that what you're saying?
Let them go to the camp.
Yeah, have some fun.
Let them play.
Yeah.
And if you want to ask them what they did, hey, did you have fun today? What was your favorite thing you did today? And they may say, man, Steve and I were messing around in line and he farted. It was really funny. That's great. They're being a kid. But if you push them, well, what'd you learn? Did you learn this? Did you learn this? What am I paying for if you didn't do this? Holy crap. No wonder your kid has anxiety. Okay? Let the kids play. Let them screw up, have consequences. Okay? In most sports, that's the great thing about sports, our consequences are immediate and apparent. And that's what kids can learn. In gymnastics, if you mess something up, it hurts. Okay? In football, if you were in the wrong place and the guy ran right by you because you went left and he went right, your screw up was apparent. It was obvious, right there. Okay, every sport has that. Okay, and there are life lessons to learn from there. Not every kid is going to play every sport, but we have to. Sports can be an extension of their life. It shouldn't be their life.
That's amazing.
I sound smarter than I look, thank God.
Bro, I'm telling you, man, that is an amazing sentiment coming from somebody who is an elite athlete, trains elite athletes at the highest level in the world, and has a business that support that wants that, that wants that, or doesn't want that, but that caters to that as well as everybody else. That you're saying that is I want people to really listen to that, because I agree that there's so many parents who don't allow their kids to grow and don't allow them to, just as long as they're safe, as long as they're support. There, on the other side of that, there was probably a lot of kids back in this, the 70s, 80s, and then me growing up in the 90s who there was some consequences here and there, but there wasn't enough support on the, on the back end of it, where, now we are becoming more present. We're having that support. We're being able to, fathers are around, more so than they ever have been. So just to counter that with knowing that you don't have to push them towards, you don't. I love that example though. What was your favorite thing today at the camp? It was he farted in line, right?
And everybody laughed. It was so funny. That's great.
Yeah, that's what you want to hear from your kid, because that's true joy, and that's true. They're enjoying their life and having
it's
fun.
That conversation starter. And what do you want your kid? You're not raising a kid. You're raising an adult,
right?
And it's in my gym, and with the national team, I only have 6 rules, and all of my staff, they can tell you the 6 rules, and it's the same for my staff, and it's the same for the athletes. Number 1 rule is be on time. The second rule is don't sit down in the gym. Okay, for coaches and kids, we're getting shit done. We're working. I can't have you sitting. Number 3 rule is no cell phones in the gym. It's I need you engaged. You need to be here. And this goes for my staff. I can't have you checking. If you come in and go, hey, Emmett's homesick, I need to have my phone with me in case the sitter calls me. No problem. Okay. But we can't do this every day, So it's no cell phones in the gym. Number 4, don't come to me with a problem without a potential solution. Okay? If you have an issue, think about what solution is going to make it work. It may not work for the business. It may not work for me, but at least I know you've given it thought. You're not just whining to me, expecting that I'm going to wave a magic wand. A kid can't come to me and go, Tony, my ankle hurts. Super. What do you want me to do? Go see the therapist, go see the team doc. What do you want me to do? If they go, my ankle hurts, I'm not going to be able to do my floor routine today. But what I can do is I'll do this on trampoline where it's softer, and I'll do this and be like, okay, that seems to work. Or it could be like, hey, you've got a competition this weekend. Like, can we meet someplace in between? Okay. Number 5 rule is everyone leaves with a smile. Okay. Everybody has good days and bad days. My day is that when they leave today, they're looking forward to tomorrow. And everybody leaves with a smile. And that includes coaches. And I may have my best gymnast could have gotten hurt, that one of my staff members just gave me their notice, all this stress in my life. But I keep smiling, and I get out to my car, and then I turn on the Ramones as loud as I can and drive home angry. Okay? That's my rule number 5. And number 6 is you can't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. We're looking for these perfect solutions, these perfect situations. Those don't exist. And you have to figure it out. And that's what we do most of the time in life, is look at a situation and figure it out.
Man, you're full of life lessons.
I'm just old.
Yeah, but I talk with a lot of people who are old, and some of them have more. Everyone has a little bit of wisdom to share, but you're constantly dropping little giddy ups on me all the time, and those are great that you've run your. Now, do you run your business that way?
Yep.
And you run the
That's my staff handbook.
staff handbook. Okay.
My staff handbook. People have these huge staff handbooks that are this big. If you follow those 6 rules, we're all happy. We're good.
That's how big it is. It's 6 rules.
Why should it be more? I shouldn't have to tell you don't come to work drunk.
Right.
Like that's your last day.
Yeah. Right.
We're
Sorry.
Yeah. That's see it. Thanks for working here. Let me have your keys.
Yeah. Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's there's rules that people have, and just kind of, I mean, we've gone so much towards that, where you sign up any business, and there's the book is this thick, and it's like you can't do this, can't do that. You don't allow freedom for innovation, freedom for expression, and most businesses don't want that because it's not scalable.
Right. But but it doesn't need to be complicated. You keep your rules basic. And it's you just with I'm dealing with moving targets. Steve today is not Steve tomorrow.
Right, with the coaches and with the kids.
Yeah.
Everybody's different. Yeah, you are dealing with moving targets, and just letting people know that this is I know that everyone's moving, and I know that everyone's coming with different emotions, different days, different that, but these are the baseline. Just follow these basic rules, and everything.
And we're all going to be good because we're all going to be happy.
Yeah.
If as adults, we have to model the behavior we want. If you want to have a team of people working around you who are good teammates, well, you have to be a good teammate. You can't get and not give.
Yeah.
And so we have to model the behavior. You model the behavior you want Emmett to have. I modeled the behavior I wanted my kids to have. So my kids have very satirical senses of humor and play practical jokes all the time. I couldn't be more proud.
I think it comes back to the action thing, man. It comes back to action. It's like I know that it's going to be great if I can tell my son and Emmett how great it is to go and play basketball, how great it is to go swing a golf club, how great it is to do workout classes, how great it is to lift weights, how great it is to do gymnastics. I can tell him all this stuff, or I can do it, and I can show him. I can show him how awesome it is.
You go and do it, and you're like, you say, hey, let's go for a hike. And they're like, oh, God, there's bugs, it's hot, it's terrible. But then you take 4 steps out in your backyard and you see a cricket. And you look at that. and you get down on your knees and you're like, I know a place where I saw cricket. It had to be 3.5 inches long. I'm going to take you there on Saturday. And you do that walk on Saturday. So we're mobile. We're made to move. We're physically made to move. It's in our genetic makeup, and that life prevents us from doing that sometimes. That's great, but it doesn't prevent us from doing it all the time.
You got to do it.
One of the most active guys that I know, who's always doing something, has been a quadriplegic since he was 19.
Really?
Yep. He's a nationally ranked judge. I'm always surprised that I'm at a conference and I see him wheeling around, and he's always around. He's always doing something.
That's amazing, the testament to human will, and we just all need to move. And if that person can move, then we all should be able to aspire to do it.
Well, if I'm a pretty optimistic guy. I'm not, I'm not a fatal optimist. But again, it comes down to acceptable risks. Am I going to fail on this? Maybe, but I'm going to try anyway. What would happen in your life if you spent a whole day saying yes to everything?
I'll tell you what, it sucks because sometimes I do that, and it's.
But what's wrong with that?
Oh, okay.
But
I'm taking the context wrong because I'm saying yes to everything that I want to do, yes to everything that I.
Think of like when.
Sometimes I'm being pulled in 1,000 different directions. That's what I was.
Yeah, I see what you. No, I was meaning like when people ask me in the gym, when people as the boss, Tony, can I do this? And I play this off like improv. Yes, and, or yes, but. Tony, can I take off Saturday? Yes, but you need to come in and clean the gym on Sunday then. Tony, can I do this? Yes, and, but what's the worst that's going to happen if we say yes to everything in those situations?
Right. Yeah.
Everything has consequences. That's the reality. Everything has consequences. You set a goal, you set your map, you program your GPS, and you go. Sometimes you get off the road and you explore the woods a little bit, but if we want to have that utopian society that you and I are dreaming of, and our dreams are different, we have to stop saying no. We have to stop saying it's not possible, and realize that we can make this happen. It's not going to be easy, but it's not impossible. And it's going to have consequences. And some of the consequences are going to be negative. You want this big house with a big yard. Okay? But if we're going to build this utopian society, that's not going to happen. That's a consequence. Mm-hmm. Okay? But by getting that, it means you get fresh vegetables through 4 months out of the year in our short growing season.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's another good perspective. It's to switch the thinking and saying yes to more so that more innovation happens instead of thinking that everything is bad. Let's just think about, understand that nothing's bad. It's just that everything has consequences, and we need to decide, like the only way you're going to grow is to go through it. And we say that a lot on the show, like the only way is through. You know
what they say about bad decisions?
Tell me.
They make the best stories.
They do, and you learn.
Yeah. My boat is actually called Bad Decisions.
Bad Decisions.
Yes.
Bad Decisions. I love it. Why? Why do you call it Bad Decisions?
Because I told my wife I was going to Market Basket, and I came back with a 20-foot boat.
That sounds awesome. Yeah. That sounds like a good story.
I backed that thing into the driveway, and she stood there, and I went, oh, shit, I'm in trouble.
Yeah. Especially, man, it's like it's on one level when it's just your wife. It's on 2 levels when it's also your business partner.
Yeah. The funny part, my son was working at a rock climbing gym down in Newburyport, and I bought the boat down in Newburyport, and I stopped by his rock climbing gym at the time. I said, hey, come out, look at this boat. And he said, oh, that's great. He goes, does mom know? I go, no. And he goes, do you need a place to stay tonight?
Oh man, that is so good. You know, man, I'm excited to, you know, to continue walking this path with you, because you're a grounded dad, you're a great businessman, a community leader, you know, somebody that I see a future, you know, like I said, we have some differences and stuff, but I see a future that I want to be like somebody like you, who's walking the way that you're walking in community and doing what you're doing for your people. And I have so much respect for you that way. I have respect for your businesses. I can't wait to get Emmett into some gymnastics. We're going to be doing it soon.
It's fun. My life advice is don't let fear be the predominant thing that's changing your decisions, because that's quicksand. You know, you're afraid. There's so many things to be afraid of. Realize that fear is just your body's way of saying, hey, something important's going on right now. Pay attention.
Yeah. That's I'm gonna take the life advice, and I constantly keep getting better at that. I keep getting better at realizing that it's just fear that's holding me back, or it's my mindset that's holding me back, or thoughts. Like I said, I know that I'll own a house in Dover or a surrounding town, you know, where I want to settle, and I would like to settle in Dover. So I know these things that I want to, that, you know, not let fear get in the way of it. You know, my son, I do have to work on that sometimes because of the training. You know, sometimes you see them, they're going to fall down and you want to catch them and you want to, you know, but sometimes it's good to, like I said, it's good to have the helmet on. But the scraped knees are a giddy up, and you learn from that.
Yep.
And, you know, I see it all the time too. Now it's like, you know, at first I was a dad, and now I see him and he'll be tripping. And at first when he would trip and fall, I always thought, oh my God, there goes his teeth. You know, there goes his teeth. And then,
you know what? That's why they're baby teeth.
That's why they're baby teeth. And I learned very quickly, this guy can just, he has reflexes. He has great reflexes, and he's learning these in his body. So he always puts his hands down. He always, even when you think it's horrible. So it's just like, just chill for a minute, man. Just chill. And I have been.
They're going to fall, you know, prevent the head injury. But, you know, scrapes and scars, they're just tattoos with better stories.
Yeah, dude. Me and you will swap some stories soon about the, you know, the scars that I was, you know, I'm one of five. I was the third boy, you know, and so fourth in line, third boy. So, you know, scars, my family would come home. Like I said, and the other thing is too, is we were allowed to go out and earn those stories, which is really cool. And I don't know if that's happening right now in society, where people are able to go earn those stories because their parent is texting them, where are you?
Oh, yeah.
When are you going to be home?
Well, here's one of the best things that I like. Where I go grocery shopping in Italy, you know what's right in front of the grocery store?
What?
A playground. Tell your kid, go play in the playground. I'm going in to go grocery shopping. Nobody's taking your kid. Nobody wants your kid.
That's amazing. That happens there.
It's no different here. But somebody told us that we need to be afraid that somebody's going to come and take our kid. Nobody's going to take your kid.
No?
No.
Okay. I see. I kind of love that, because I'm of that mindset where I'm like, let the kid be free. And maybe there is certain places where the kid might get taken, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't let my kid play on the median strip of 95.
Right. But in front of the supermarket, when you're in there with other kids.
Okay. You're like, yeah, you know, nobody's going to take your kid. You tell your kid, don't get in a car with anybody else. If you get in a car, you know, if somebody comes and gets you, yell really loud. I'm going grocery shopping.
This sounds like a for a project, right? You know, in that Hannaford parking lot, right in Dover, baby, Central Ave. What do we say?
That would never happen here.
No.
People are led by fear, because fear sells newspapers. Fear sells YouTube space.
Yeah.
And that's not going to happen.
It's frustrating. It's frustrating because I know that my audience, I could grow my audience bigger and faster, but I have like an ethical, you know, giddy up that I have to do it with. And so I can't, I could placate to that. I could placate to the fear, but I'm trying to do the opposite of that.
Well,
I'm trying to have these conversations.
Because that's what we need. I mean, think about around Halloween. Oh, check your candy. Somebody might have put drugs in your candy. I know a lot of people that took a lot of drugs. They're not giving it away. They're not putting it in anybody's candy.
Right.
That's not going to happen. The only instance of drugs ever being found, of the only instance that ever happened with that is a kid got into his dad's stash. Okay? Police came in, said, where did he get the drugs? Somebody must have put it in his candy. And that ran the headline.
So it is so funny because you hear it every year. There is some sick psychopaths out there, right? That would do some dirty stuff and would put
Why? If they had the drugs, they're not going to do that.
You're right. Yeah, I'm not in that. Yeah, just like, yeah.
I mean, like think about that.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. I mean, it's
okay.
So, it is.
And the sick person that's going to do that, they're going to do something else. That's not their psychopathic behavior. They want to see the result.
Mm.
So giving a kid drugs and letting the kid go home and
right.
There's no so it didn't happen.
Yeah. Yeah. It's fake news. It's fake news. And the statistics of it, even that, right? Like there's 35,000 people in Dover, tons of kids that go out and celebrate, it's Halloween every single year. And it's never happened here. But everyone here is nervous about it because maybe one time once, somebody did, and it wasn't even
never happened. Think about anybody that you know that has easy access to hard enough drugs that they can.
Yeah, you
put
wouldn't
it
give
in
them away, dude.
They're not putting it in a kid's candy bar
for sure, unless you're a psycho who.
They're not doing that.
Yeah, they're probably not doing it. Yeah, you're right.
There's no rationale behind it at all. The sickest person at all that it's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
So this is why you can't think, people. You can't let this happen. You can control your life. And if you live in fear, then your kids are going to live in fear. Then we become not a society, but this disjointed thing where our kids afraid to go next door when they do need help.
Yeah. Yeah, dude, you can't live in fear. You can't. And I'm going to, my being was just, I wasn't afraid of anything like that. I just was, these phone thing, man, it does change things because we were able to live that free life, and that is so necessary for kids. So allowing them to just live in that freedom, and it's the parents' job to do that because we're the ones who give them the phone.
Right.
We're the ones who program the phone.
There was somebody that said, so phones are not going to be allowed in schools probably this fall.
Awesome.
Like there's a whole movement. The kids don't want it.
It's happened in some states already and stuff that they've
It's already happened in some states, and I'm predicting that this fall there'll be, and there's not going to be any pushback because the parents who are the super fearful parents who are like, oh, I need to know where my kid is. What if there's a school shooter? What if there's all this? What's your phone going to have? It's
of
not
course.
going to help.
Right, exactly. The phone doesn't help.
So, so I predict that this fall or next fall that there just won't be. Nobody wants them in schools. So I think that's the first step. I don't think kids should have a phone until they're 13.
Yeah, I
just made up that number. It doesn't.
No, I think that's a good. I think that's a good number. I'm going to delay it as long as I can. Yeah. I'm going to delay it for absolutely as long as I can. I see my brother's kids, and he's doing a pretty good job of it. Where the oldest one, probably is. I think he just turned 12, and he just, he just got a phone last year, and so it's good and bad. But the thing is, dude, is you got the subversion of it is that the kids now need the phone. They need a phone to participate in the same type of stuff that we need to. I couldn't even. As Tony said, I lost my phone in the lawnmower. I couldn't get into my bank account because I needed to do 4 different text messages. I couldn't get into any of my accounts.
Oh yeah, if my phone, and I've had my phone stolen once, and if it happened now, I couldn't log in because they're like, okay, we send a text message to your phone. My wife's traveling. I couldn't get onto Netflix last night because it kept sending because we had too many. I opened it up on our other television, so this one wouldn't let me open it up without sending a text message. And she's out in Colorado, and I didn't want to bother her, so I'm like, I guess I'll watch Amazon.
But yeah, man. And so I just say and I think you've already said it, is not be fearful of it. Let's not be fearful of the technology. Know that this technology exists and that people on the other side of it, there is a profit, driving center to that. And we need to protect our kids, but protect them by allowing them to be more free of the phones, free of that, and to have the right relationship with it when they do have it. Create a better relationship than I was just given a phone. I was just given a phone in 8th grade and saying, like, because this is a new technology, I lobbied my parents enough to get the phone.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, right. And so, and I was able to. Then I just kind of, what can you do with this thing? What can it be? And I grew up in that,
I was in the time when, like, I remember my daughter's first phone. It was probably the same year you got yours. It was basically a phone.
Yeah, right. You could send 50 text messages a month. That's it, back and forth.
Yeah. Yeah, and you had to go like, A.
Yeah, exactly, right.
Yeah.
And that I feel like that's good. That was a good version of it. And if we could have kept it that way for the kids, that would have been good.
But we can.
Right, we're just the ones who have to do it. Not rely on society or the government or whoever to implement that. It's us.
There is an element of personal responsibility, and the sooner our kids realize that the profit incentive is not in their favor, that there's companies here mining your information so they can sell you something, that they have to understand that. When I was a kid, walking down the street, there was always the crazy guy screaming at the corner. And our parents would be like, don't go over by him. He's crazy. And you would walk around. Well, now the crazy guy, instead of screaming on the corner, has his own podcast or has his own YouTube channel. And he just gets a bigger audience. Doesn't make him any more sane. He just has a bigger audience. So we have to tell our kids, it's okay to say no. It's okay to say, I choose not to participate.
Yeah, I choose not to participate in this content. I choose not to participate in what society is saying is good.
Yeah,
and it's our job to help because they're kids. They're easily impressionable, easily manipulated.
And somebody, right? The reality is, right now, somebody's always trying to sell you something. Mm-hmm. And let's get beyond that. We're better than this. We're better than this as human beings. We're better than this as a society. Let's say no.
Yeah. Let's say no. Let's say no to the subversion of our government from both sides, and let's take it back from the people. Let's take it back as the people. And I think that's happening. I do feel like it's happening a little bit. I want it to continue to happen, and I'm gonna take action to make sure that it does happen. I'm going to keep doing the show. I'm going to raise my kid in the community. I'm going to be deeply rooted in the community. Because like when you do that stuff, like you said, man, it's if people are doing this and they're in the community, I could take my kid to the playground that's outside Hannaford's and leave them there. And people will just, people eventually they'll know that if you can get in community, this is a good family. This is good people. This is a good leader in the community. That's his kid doing this. Other people will do it. And you create safety in that.
And right now, if you did that, DCYS would meet in the egg aisle.
Oh, for real, dude.
You left your kid at the playground. It's a playground.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying I'm leaving a 3-year-old, but at 5, 6, if I'm running in to get eggs and milk, go swing. See you in 10.
Yeah, they need a little bit more agency.
Yep.
And that's what you're giving them in the gym.
Oh, I try.
Yeah.
I try. Again, I think a lot of sports, because the consequences are apparent and fast, that as a coach, I find myself with my foot on the brake. I don't really ever have to hit the gas because the kids want to hit the gas. I have to go like, hey, we're just going to slow down for a second. And we're going to really, let's give this some thought. Okay, now you ready? And they say, yes, all right, giddy up. Let's do this.
Gamba.
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 I'm going to get you a shirt in Italy that says that.
Dude, please bring me a Gamba shirt.
I will.
Yeah, I need one. Tony, I'll tell you what, man, it's been awesome chatting with you today. You've been an awesome guest.
This was great. We covered a wide variety. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, a wide variety of stuff where, we engaged all across the spectrum about coaching and leadership and human development and child development and what's going on in here in our local community. And I don't joke when I say it, man. Like, I aspire to be a lot of people, but you're definitely one of them. And I aspire.
You just like my hair.
You might be that dude. It's the hair and the fucking the upside down, cartwheels and doing handstands.
I could teach you a handstand, but I don't know about the hair. I think that's I developed that.
Oh, dude, exactly. It's the good genes,
Yeah, that's true.
Oh man, and maybe something that you're doing, that that like that guy said, maybe it's the low center of gravity.
Oh yeah.
That's good for your hair, good for your head.
Yeah, that's it. I could do a handstand. So when I'm upside down, the blood rushes to there.
Yes, exactly. There's something to it. Well, man, where can the people find you, personally and professionally?
So I have a couple of different blogs. My political blog is tonyretrosi.org. That's my political writings and some community thoughts. My gymnastics consulting is gymmomentum.com. And from either one of those, you can kind of find my personal blog, Vassalando, which was named after my brother's magazine that he started back in the 90s. And it just kind of started with me writing him letters. Occasionally I'll put something funny on there, sometimes some poetry, just sometimes some thoughts. But writing these days has kind of become my own therapy. My goal has always been just to be relevant and make an impact on those around me, and I think I'm doing that. So I'm pretty happy with my life.
Giddy up. Do you have any social medias where they can reach out, or is that we'll leave those off?
On Instagram, Tony Atlantic and Gym Momentum, and Tony Retrosi for Dover is on Instagram. Those I actually check. I don't engage too much on social media. I post stuff because I have to, but as somebody told me, nobody's ever changed their mind by reading a post someone put up there. So I don't engage much on social media.
So yeah, reach out to the contact forms if the people want to reach you.
Yeah, that you'll definitely you can definitely get in touch with me through that. T Retrosi at gymmomentum.com. If you have any questions, if you want to tell me a joke, I'll listen to that too.
Giddy up, man. Well, we're definitely going to have you back because you've been a blast today.
Oh yeah, we didn't even touch the whole gymnastics and the Olympic journey, so we got more.
We got more, dude. We got more, and we're gonna go deeper. I can't wait to have you back, guys. Please follow Tony. Please like and subscribe to this show. Share it with a friend. Share this one with a coach. Share this one with a parent who is being a little bit too hard on their kid. Not allowing them to have fun. Make that decision. Give it to the parent. Do it in a nice way. Have some fun with that parent, because that's really what it is. Parents need to have fun too. Everyone needs to have fun. We need to have a better society that way. So we appreciate you guys, and we will see you next time. Giddy up.
Gamba.
Gamba.